Hi everyone, thanks for being here for this talk about JVM and security. This is, I don't come so often to the US, so perhaps we might start with a bit of trivia. Can anyone guess where I'm from? Okay, you overheard it. But actually I'm from France. Yeah, so something I forgot. Please read the session, and more importantly for the speakers, just don't rate it. If you give a bad rating, please let me know why. It's very interesting. If I just have like an unhappy face, I have no clue why I did something bad. So yeah, that's the best compliment I can get. I'm French. I try very hard to hide it. I can also talk like this if you prefer, but in general, people don't understand much. Up to you. And yes, I work in Switzerland since about 10 years. Can anybody tell me what is the specificity of the Swiss flag? The Swiss flag is very specific. It's unique in the world for one thing. Anybody knows? Yeah, you know obviously why. Nobody?
That's a cross.
Yeah, of course, there are other, but
It has different dimensions.
yeah. It's square. Unique in the world, Swiss flag. And of course, when you think about Switzerland, you know where is Switzerland in all these like patchwork of countries. Like Switzerland has less than like 8 million inhabitants, which is basically less than the population of Paris. So who can tell me where, like what color is Switzerland on this map? Hey, guys, you rock. That's good. Yes. It's a little piece of land which is next to France. And of course, yeah, Switzerland, everybody is rich. I mean, everybody knows that everybody has lots of money in Switzerland. So we have so much money that we have like 1,000 banknotes, because otherwise it would be very hard to get all this money. We are the best, I mean, the most chocolate eaters in the world, like 12 kilos per year, I think. It's a lot of chocolates. And we melt cheese. But we really melt it, not put it on hamburgers. We put it on top and melt cheese. And as a fun fact also, if you happen to live in Switzerland for more than 12 years, you can ask to have the Swiss passport. And one of the questions is, how do you make the fondue? There are many ways, but one is a traditional way, and you must know how to make the fondue otherwise. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's one of the things I've heard. Okay, thank you for your attention. Now that we know each other, I'm Nicolas Frankel. I've been a Java developer for more than 17 years. I love Spring, I love Kotlin, I love a lot of stuff. And for like 6 months ago, I decided that it was much more fun to go to conferences instead of working in real projects. So now I'm a developer advocate for a company called EXOSCALE, and we provide cloud services. It's a Swiss-based company. Who here is using cloud computing? Google, Amazon? Yeah, so 75% of the room. Who knows about the Cloud Act? The Cloud Act is a US law. You should know about it if you are using the cloud. But that's funny because in Europe, I get the same blank stares as here. So the Cloud Act tells that if you are contract with a US company, and I believe that many of you contract with US companies since you are US-based, basically, the government can access the data anywhere it's located in the world, on any data center. So it's a law you should be aware of, very, very aware of. Privacy of your data, if you value your data. And we are Swiss-based, so no Cloud Act. Just mentioned. OK. So I believe that you are here all Java developer. Who here is a Java developer? Nearly everyone? Yes, good. So you know about the GRE and you know about the reflection API, right? Okay, so first work of the day. Yes, sorry, I didn't tell you, but you need to work in my talks. Who can tell me what this snippet does? Now you regret telling you were Java developers? Yes, thank you.
Prints out a private member.
Yeah, it prints out private member, so let's make sure of that. Just check something. I will run the hoops. I remove that up, and now, basically, great. Yeah, this is private, but you can access it. Who never did that? Really? Okay, good. That's good. Now, second quiz of the day, a bit harder. Who can tell me what that snippet does? It's a bit harder, huh? Any guess? It changes the type. It changes the type. So who thought that Java was a statically typed language? Actually, it's not. So if I run it, hidden should be an int, and in fact, it's a string. I've changed the type through the reflection API. Who is a bit afraid now? One, so only one. Okay. So I will have to do better. We can do something else then. I've created a little like money transfer service. A very, very, very small one. It's written in Kotlin. It's still run on the JVM. It's not an issue. So this is, I mean, even if you don't know Kotlin, if you're a Java developer, it's Spring Boot application, so it's pretty easy. If I run it, I will run the attach application. And normally, once it starts, I can go on the hack stuff, and I run it, and magically, it's not what I wanted. It's here what I wanted, here. So here it tells me I have successfully transferred like money from one account to another. This is really like high-level engineering. Very, very important. Now what we can do is basically, I've created a little hack. So the only thing that I need to do is I need to get the ID of this application, and I can try to hack it. Whoops. Just need the PID. I will hack it. Hack is done. Nothing happened. And now I continue. I run not in debug mode. I run in perfectly normal mode. Everything is fine. The application didn't restart. And if I try to ask it again, and I didn't change the application. The running application is like running, nothing happened. So basically, I change the bytecodes of the running application. That's bad. No debug, no nothing. It's a perfectly normally running JVM. And worse, I mean, the best hacks are the ones that are not detected. So if I restart my application, and I do the same requests, nothing happened. Now who is afraid? A bit more, but still not that many people. Okay. So the reflection is used by a lot of like languages, framework, libraries on the JVM. If you told me that you never used the hack that I mentioned yourself, the fact that you can access private members, then some frameworks used it for you. Like if you are using GPA, for example, if you have private members, it does it. It accesses the private members, if not you. If you are using Groovy, there is some kind of reflection because you must access the methods and whatever at runtime from objects you don't know about. So Hibernate, whatever, Spring does a lot of reflection. All those frameworks are using reflection. But as I showed you, it's not only about reflection. You can do a lot with the JVM. You can make network calls. You can compile code on the fly. You can execute code. You can do everything. And probably the problem is that your application doesn't require it. Your application probably doesn't require on-the-fly compilation. So you have this huge platform, and you can do a lot of stuff with it, but you don't need everything. And perhaps you will tell me that, yeah, but look, we have a lot of safeguards. For example, we have static analyzer. Who here is using SonarQube? Yeah, a lot of people are using SonarQube. So you might say, hey, it might catch some things. The problem is that the rules that you create in SonarQube or that are already coded, the scope is pretty limited. It has no context. It doesn't know if your application needs to compile code or not. So that means that the default rules don't apply, and you need to create rules for every project. And the rules that are stored in SonarQube, they are not in your Git repository, so it's very hard to understand. Bytecode analyzer, you could also have bytecode analyzer doing the same thing. So you understand a lot more what happens underneath, but the problem is, again, you have no context. You have no clue whether this is like acceptable or not. Code reviews. Who here is doing code review? Who is not? Good. Or you are too shy. The problem with code reviews is there might be only two people involved. The guy who commits and the guy who approves. And if the guy who approves makes a mistake or doesn't know, or like his friend with the guy who commits, doesn't work that well either. But perhaps we have a dedicated team of people who are like dedicated to security. Who here has such a team in his company? Good. My experience showed me that there are two kinds of teams. Anybody working in such a team here? Good. Okay. So I will try to be as nice as possible. Security teams come in two flavors. The ones who are checkbox-oriented, checkbox-driven, compliance. It's all about compliance. Did you do that? Yes, checkbox. we are not responsible. The checkbox was checked. They are just a PITA, and they are not very helpful. And then the guys who really know how it works, the guy who can help you, in general, they have a lot of work. They don't have time to check everything. And perhaps you know about this stuff that you have played with it during your studies or whatever. It's called steganography. And steganography is the way that you can hide data into other data. So you could hide data like text into another text, or text into a video, or image into a video, or text into an image, something like that. And let's do a demo for that. I will use only Java code. I will use only the JVM. And I have created a little like text, which happens to be code. And I can, if you want, I can change the text. So let's say, hello, go to Chicago. And I have this nice picture of a little harmless kitten. Nothing bad can happen with it. And yeah, of course, kitten, they are harmless. What I will do, I've written code that I will hide this message into the picture. And because I'm super lazy, I've taken Java code out from the internet. So it's just a kind of library. It's called STEGANOGRAPHY. I just run it. And the original picture is called kitten.jpg. And the end, I've got this result, which is pretty similar. You can see nothing. But inside this kitten, there is hidden code. It's not that harmless. And now I can have codes that will get the picture, extract the text, and because it's valid Java code, I can compile it on the fly, and I can execute it on the fly. So let's do it. Are you afraid now? Cannot do better than that to make you afraid. Now imagine if I was a bad guy, because obviously I'm not. Obviously. If I was a bad guy, what I could do, I could create a library, a useful library, that would read and manipulate images. And I would publish it on Maven Central, and it would be really, really, really useful so that many, many, many people would start using it. And inside this library, I would hide such a steganography feature. And so I could have friends in companies using this library, and they could commit pictures, not text. And then, hidden inside this picture, there would be code that would be executed on production environment. In banks, for example, or in automotive providers, or in self-driving car software providers, or in plane software providers. Please don't do it. I'm taking the plane regularly. I don't want that. And of course, it could never happen, because every one of you checks the library he or she uses, right? Why are you laughing? Of course you are checking, right? And I would go even further than that, because you are checking, but you are not sure that the sources of any library on GitHub is exactly the source of the jar that you are using on Maven Central. So what you are doing is you are checking out the code and building it yourself, right? But of course, that can never happen. Only the NPM ecosystem has such stories. You might have heard about it recently, perhaps not that recently, like 6 months ago. What happened is that one guy who wrote a very useful library in Node.js, yeah, it happens, he wanted to let it go, so he searched for another maintainer. And one of the guys stepped in and said, yeah, I want to maintain the library. And what happened, the next version, he had woven it some kind of Bitcoin mining library, so that if you used the new version of the dependency, then you would give your CPU to mine him or her Bitcoins or any cryptocurrencies. And that would never happen in Java land because we are so much better, right? Because, as I mentioned, you are already checking. You are building from sources. If you are not, you should be very, very afraid. Because right now, your production environment is in danger. Remember that stuff? Who is old enough to remember that stuff? Now I'm in the 50% who remember that stuff. They were called applets. And applets were a way to run Java code from the internet on your computer. And so that was dangerous because the people who designed applets, they knew that it's dangerous to get code from the internet to run it on your computer and you have no clue what it does. So what they designed is that applets were meant to run in such a called sandbox environment with limited access, like no file read, no file write, no blah blah, no, unless you gave it permission, because sometimes you needed the applet to access your file system. Sandbox environment. So basically, the JVM already now, and probably since version 1.0, has two modes. The GOTO mode, that everybody runs on, and the sandbox mode. And the sandbox mode is achieved through something called the security manager. Again, it's a very, very old stuff. And how you could activate the security manager? Well, when you run Java, you use a system property, -d java.security.manager. Otherwise, you could use the API to say system.setSecurityManager, whatever manager. And of course, those two options, one of them is very bad. Yeah, there are a lot of traps in this presentation. It's to keep your attention. Who can tell me? The second one is very bad, because whatever you do before can be compromised. So it's no use to set a security manager through the API. The only way to set the security manager is through the command line. And very interestingly, if you set the security manager, then it's very hard to unset it. Well, it's not hard, but you need access rights. You need a permission. And so the first thing is to set the security manager, and the second thing is to use permissions. So it's just like authorizations in standard JAS parlance. Between Java 8 and Java 9, the location of the default permission file changed because the whole security folder hierarchy changed. So if you are before Java 9, if you are Java 8 or lower, there is a file called Java Security in glib security that points to a file called java.policy in glib security. And afterwards, now everything has been moved to conf/security. However, the file format themselves are the same. It's just the location that changed. But if you use a default policy file, what can happen? Could be compromised. So normally you should set your own policy file. And there are two ways, again, to set the policy file. One is through double equal sign, sorry, and the other is a one single equal sign. Who knows about those differences? One of them is good, the other is bad, like always. No? Right or wrong, black or white, I don't know, odd or even. The second one just adds to the default permissions. So again, if the default permissions have been compromised, blah, 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 you shouldn't do it. The first one, just say, those are the only permission I need. Don't use any other. Actually, even if they are not compromised, it could make sense. I don't know who is using microservices, but I know a lot of companies are not using microservices. So a lot of companies are using one single JVM on the system to run multiple applications. So it makes sense that every application has its own policy file, which is complete. In that case, you should use the first line. So it's another additional system property with double equal sign pointing to the policy file. And perhaps, if you are interested in security, you know about the principle of least privileges, meaning that you should be given the permissions that you need to do your work, but not more. So a good policy file should implement the principle of least privileges. Does your application need to compile code? Probably not. So why should you have the right to compile code? Does your application need to execute code on the fly? Likewise, I'm not sure you need to, so you shouldn't have the permission to do it. Who here is a PHP developer or was a PHP developer or has been doing PHP? Yeah. You seem super happy about that. I'm also a teacher at university, and basically when I talk to people having done PHP, the first thing they do when they have a permission issue is chmod 777. I'm not joking, that's true, everybody does it. You find a lot of this answer on Stack Overflow. This is exactly what the principle of least privilege is against. So the default permissions, I mean on Java 9, are very few actually. It's just you can listen on some ports and you can read some system properties. So not all of them, a few of them. So, and I mean read, not write. The good thing about those permissions is they are enforced in the GDK. So yes, you could imagine that through some black magic, class loading could be changed so that the GDK classes could be changed. But let's say that the probability is very, very low. And so this is like a very good way to enforce that whatever you set in the policy file will be enforced. So if you check, for example, the set accessible that I used in the GRE example, then you will check that if there is a security manager, then we will check that you have the permissions to really set the stuff accessible. And if you don't, then it won't work. And there are a lot of permissions. Interestingly enough, there is a permission called all permission. That one seems very funny, but actually I found a use case that is very useful for it, so let's keep it in mind. You have property permission, and for every property permission, you can decide for one property if it can be read, if it can be written, and so on and so forth. I mean, there is a lot of documentation on that. It's just for a reminder. As something that I love also, who here is using Java 11? Java 9, sorry. Java 9 onward. Okay, who is using modules? Yeah, sorry about that. That's what I expected. So basically, you are shipping the whole GRE, in production, and so you have AWT, hoo-hoo. And in AWT, you are able to read the clipboard. So if you are copy-pasting passwords on production, for whatever reason, and you don't have like a security manager, by default, anyone, perhaps some code that is embedded in images could access the clipboard and get your passwords in production. That would be very, very bad. So how do you create a policy file? Well, this is a simple structure. So you tell the jar, and for like every permission that you want, you tell the name of the permission and additional parameters. And let's demo it again. So the first thing is I will get back to my very, very simple, stupid example. And this is how you stop doing that. -d java.security.manager. Now if I run it, it doesn't work anymore. That's what should happen by default when you run a Spring application, for example. Okay, now let's get back to a more interesting example, the Spring Pet Clinic. Who knows about the Spring Pet Clinic? Okay, so I will show the Spring Pet Clinic because not that many people know it. So it's like a showcase of what Spring can do. Oh no. I already have another application running. It's not this one. What application do I have running? Yes, this one, of course. Hey, stop it. Stop now. Yes, thanks. Sorry for that. Much better. So now if I go here and I go on localhost 8080, you see, like again, kitten and puppy, because they are so cute. So you can, like, it's a database, so you can try to find owners. On a owner, you can, like, get the detail. You can edit the detail of the owner. Veterinarian is the same. And, of course, as always, if something bad happens, you should have a catch-all error management that says, hey, something bad happened, but you still display the nice message and not like a stack trace. Okay, this is a very simple use case. So what I want to do now, I want to run this application with a security manager. Because now I hope that everybody is convinced that there is no other way to run any JVM application. Who is not convinced? Because in that case, I did a very bad job. Okay. So now I have added a simple permission just to get things running. And this file is called JVM policy. So I will say, OK, I will just check. I have added the security manager. I have like the double equal sign of the JVM policy. And I run it. So normally what should happen now? Sorry? It shouldn't start, right? Because I mean, a lot of stuff happen in Spring that perhaps are not good. So because of the list principal privilege, I will start adding permissions one by one until I get the whole thing working. Works for you? Let's do it. So here it tells me that I need the property permission. So I will add the new Java util property permission. And here, those are two like parameters. Oh, sorry. And here there must be a comma. That's how it works. So I have a new one now. It's the same one, but now before it was read, now it's write. So I can do that. Or alternatively, I can do that. And the next one is runtime permission on the set factory method. And the next one is, how long do we have?
15 minutes.
15 minutes, not 15 hours. Do you want me to code the rest of the permission file for 15 hours? Who said yes? Are you crazy, guys? Now, obviously, I mean, I can stay there for really a long time and do the stuff. And this is what you need to do not only once, but every time you change your code. Because not only you can the added code might require new permissions, but the code might also require less permissions, so it should be shadowed in the file. You should remove permissions. And if you change the version of a library, of a dependency, that should be done also. And of course, that's the reason why not many people do it. And actually, in 17 years, I never seen it done only once, never. Because it's super boring. It's super time consuming. So, remember about this all permission stuff? Well, if I set the all permission, and then I log every time there is a permission that is granted, I will have every permission I need. So let's do it. $15 hours. There are a lot of duplicates, of course. And look, it started. But now, I will just put it here. And if I load one page, I have additional permissions that are requested. It's not only about starting. It's about all accesses. And yeah, stop it. Now it's gone. We understood everything. Now imagine that you dump that file and you remove the duplicates and you clean it up a bit. And then you could have something like that. And it's only 250 lines of permissions. And I took shortcuts. Actually, the file should be a bit longer. And now, if we use this one, so I can show you this security manager final policy. So I'm not bullshitting you like every consultant does. I've been a consultant, I know it. And now I can have access to the application. And it works as expected. Of course, again, I took shortcuts. It's not as straightforward. For example, at runtime, Spring will try to access the temporary folder and create some stuff inside in a random location. So as soon as you start to have random stuff, it's bad. So what you must say is, after this pass, everything that you do inside is not my problem anymore. I give you permission to write everything inside this path. Likewise, it uses random ports. So you cannot just give access to one port. You must give access to a range of ports. Or, and I believe, and I didn't check it, you must find a way to force Spring to use one single port, which should be the way to go, and then only give permissions to this single port. Also, who uses Jcache in the JDK? Nobody uses Jcache? The current implementation of, you know the Jcache, even if you don't use it. It's a basic cache abstraction. So basically, you just create caches instead of having your hash map, let's face it. You have like a real cache implementations with Xperi and stuff like that. The people who wrote the Gcache implementation in the current GDK, they check for some properties. But instead of telling the code how it's written, is instead of asking, hey, get me this property, and then you can give access to this property, they enumerate through all properties until they find the right key. So one of the shortcuts I had to take, I had no other way, was to give access to every system property to my application. You agree it's really bad? Yeah, I agree too. The good thing is that it seems that they have patched it in the code, and now we need to wait for the next version to see if the patch will find its way into the production GDK. So this doesn't help you make the least privilege principle in action. However, it's still a somewhat working stuff. So I guess now my point is clear. You have the choice. You can pretend that this talk never happened and get back to work Thursday or next week. Everything will be fine. Nothing will have changed. You will be safe. Nobody can hack your production environment through the JVM. Everything is fine. Or you can mark my words and understand that it's not because it has always been done like this that you should continue doing it like this. Because even if you are a good guy, like me, perhaps the person sitting next to you is not. And he or she heard that talk. And he or she now has ideas in how to do bad stuff to your production environment. And of course, everything is contextual. If you are handling the Candy Crush stuff, it's not very important if someone hacks the JVM of the Candy Crush server. What could go wrong? You could credit some people with, I don't know, more whatever. But if you work in banks, if you work in self-driving cars, in trains, I mean, in power plants, nuclear power plants, anyone? I mean, what could go wrong if someone hacks the JVM in production? Remember to read the session. As I mentioned, please, if you give me a bad stuff, then give me the comments as well so I know what I could improve for the next thing. Here you have some references. So of course, I encourage you to read my weekly blog posts. You can follow me on Twitter. And on GitHub, they are all code sample that I have showed you. So you could replay them at home. And the last reference, I've written a series, because if you start doing what I showed you, it's just the beginning. Because afterwards, you need to make sure that your code is signed and all of this. So it's just the beginning to how to secure the JVM. So I see that there are some questions already, and that is good.